Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Arctic Game Talk. Pleasure to have you here again. My name is Johan Linder, and this is my colleague
Therese Mossberg.
So, some news from the Arctic Game Lab region. We are working hard on a game jam in September. It will be in Skellefteå, and we'll see if it's going to be more sites as well.
Samus Foundation and Laser Wolf Studios is moving in this week at Campus Skellefteå. This means that we're almost full in our areas here at campus. So we're now looking for possibilities to grow the area here and be even more.
Yeah, it's really good news.
It's really nice.
Yeah, and the 17th of June we have a Sweden game pitch, and we know that 3 of the companies from the region is involved, so that's going to be great. We're looking forward to that and hope they will have a good success.
2019 was a record year for the gaming industry in Northern Västerbotten. The numbers of employees has doubled and the number of companies has increased by almost 30%. Really nice numbers. Today we're almost 400 professional game developers operating in 70 companies. The growth rate is still high despite of Corona. You can read more about this at our website. Last Friday we were also mentioned in the weekend, a long article about this Arctic Game Lab region, so please read that article. I will post the link in the chat afterwards.
It was super. We got really good attention from that, and Teresa was able to be broadcasted in radio all over Sweden for that. Super.
Yeah.
Local news then. We have Polar Dragons group is looking for junior or semi-junior developers for their team here in Skellefteå. They are looking for coder to be able to jump in a couple of hours here and there to implement SDKs of the games they publish. Experience from Unity, Cocos 2D, publishing on Android and iTunes is a plus. If you're interested, you can send me an email or magnus.soderberg@polardragons.com.
And then we have some news from Wonderworld, the Cursed Painting. The second expansion of the audio RPG, The Cursed Painting, was released the 2nd of June. The expansion features brand new weapons, puzzles, and more areas to explore.
Yeah, and Wonderworld is also looking for beta testers for their game. So if you're interested to play some games from them, please make a shout out. You can look at wonderworld.net/beta for more information.
We will post the link in the chat also. We have also some news from Sordix. Their game Captain Sabeltand was first developed for Nintendo Switch, and now they have just released that they will develop it for PC as well.
Yeah, and some global and event news. Gamescom Asia just released information that it's going to be delayed until 2021. The inaugural edition was supposed to be now this year, but that has been cancelled and pushed back to October 15th to 18th next year. And that will be in Singapore. Oh, I'm corrected. It will be October 14th to 17th next year in Singapore. Yeah, and we also have some digital events coming up. We will have Indigo 2020 in the Netherlands. That's of course digital, so you just sign in for it. That's June 26th. And it's free access for publishers and investors. We have Ludicious 2020, July 1st to 3rd. We have First Playable 2020, which will be July 15th to 16th. And the GDC Summer Edition is, of course, August 4th to 6th. And the Meet to Match, the online Cologne edition, will be August 25th to 27th. So no vacation this summer. Super.
Yeah, and now it's time for today's speaker. We have Stefan Lampinen with us.
Yes, hello.
Welcome, Stefan.
Thank you.
So really happy you could join us. I don't know, you have maybe a short presentation you want to run or so, but it's really good to have you here at least. We've been talking and meeting since I think 2016. And it's always nice to meet you. So it's going to be really interesting to hear you look at or spread your wisdom of what you're seeing in the games industry. So please go ahead.
You want me to start now, more or less?
Yeah, please do.
Go ahead.
So let's see if that's coming up. So basically, I was planning to give a snapshot about the industry because since before Corona, I was traveling every week, or I would say around the world, but a lot in Europe to meet various people. And I know somebody listening there knows what I'm already doing, but I'm running an advisor business, mostly giving quick advice, helping with pitch decks, also doing business intelligence. Can you trust this company? How good is the leadership team? And so on. And of course, introductions when if you really need to know a person, you can't get hold of a big boss somewhere, or you need to get hold of an investor, I can help them if I think the match is correct, so to say. So that's basically Game Advisor, and I have a company in UK, which I'm finally planning to go to June 21st, and obviously the Swedish Game Advisor Sweden AB. And my idea today was basically give you an overview of how I see the global trend, what's happening in Sweden and Nordic, a little bit of platform, and then what you should think about when you need more financing, if you need more financing. So that's me. Let's see if this works. Actually, I can start without that. So if you look from I don't have a slide on this. If we start from a global perspective going into the world, we already know that Southeast Asia is the fastest growing region. Happened to be there in November before the breakout, so to say. And you have mobile exploding there, but you also have esport, big companies like Garena, for example, also an investor, which are actively seeking investment in Europe, for example. But you also have Swedish company, you have ePulse from Örebro, esport company that put a base quickly in Kuala Lumpur. And you probably also know Boomi from Luleå, who has a niche approach into first the test market into Southeast Asia. So I think that's a very interesting region, relatively easy to get access to. For example, I have great contacts there as well. If you look at China, nothing really new. The restriction is easing off when it comes to content and regulation from the government. Tencent, the investment company, continue to be incredibly proactive, and it's a little bit scary to see how much Tencent own of all the game industries. By far the biggest conglomerate in the world today when you look into the ownership. I mean, they're obviously bigger than Activision. And also in China, after years and years, you have consoles moving in there because everybody's been afraid of China because of the lack of respect of IP and brands. So the movie industry withdrew the DVDs long time ago from China, like Warner Brothers. But now you see Nintendo Switch is moving in, and also in India you have Xbox, you have consoles coming into this market now, which obviously broadening and help to propel the growth. Same with India. I've been a little bit careful there because people tend to misunderstand that there are different smartphones in India, and obviously also the monetization in Asia is different from the monetization in Europe to a large degree. If we then go to Japan, they're marching on, traditionally fantastic games market. They also are interested in looking into Europe and even Nordic region more. Last week I had a call with an investment company from Japan, and I was also over in Tokyo 18 months ago talking to investors about the Nordic market. So that's a market I really like from my early days from Sega and Electronic Arts. If we then move into two countries which cause a little bit of friction, one is Russia, mostly because of the propaganda from West and Donald Trump. It's a great market. Apple never withdraw from Russia. So Russia is an interesting market if you know how to enter, because it's also obviously very huge. Another market that people are, let's wait, is Turkey. Of course, you have political instability, you have financial instability, but you can still do a market entry there. And it's a massive market. I was in charge of Turkey for 4 years. 80 million people. Istanbul, close to 18 million people. And Turkey is now a landing spot for the MENA region. So a lot of Chinese companies put their first port of entry into Turkey, and then they move into, because Istanbul is obviously based both in Asia and Europe. So that's my 4 minutes about the world, excluding Sweden and Nordic. So if we go to Nordic, I've been impressed by the stock market Nasdaq, because they've been very proactive, traveling around the Europe and say, hey, games companies, come into Nasdaq, which is obviously Stockholm and of course Helsingfors as well, Helsinki. And I had an assignment from them last year in Gamescom, because they asked, Stefan, can you gather 20 interesting people around the world where the company might be on the IPO stock listing? And I did, and luckily everybody showed up. You also have, if we then, in Denmark, very good with esport. But if you look into then Sweden, so many investment companies are now looking into games, helping games companies also for a smaller stock listing. Today at 2:00, I have a walking around in Berzelii Park here in Stockholm with the head of M&A for Ernst & Young, where we talk about the climate of the game industry, which is it's actually propelling more than ever, especially in Sweden. You also have many new business angels that's coming into the scene, and private investors, and they're coming in for many reasons. One is that they've been making money from the gambling industry, and they either bored of gambling industry or had too much money, or think some ethical point of view with the gambling industry. So there are a lot of individuals that say, hey, how do I reach out to the games industry? And it's not so easy to connect nowadays, which I'm coming into in a minute. But you also have successful individuals that is investing. The former guys from Minecraft, where I happen to be in their advisor board, they started an investment company called Agof, a group of good friends. So there was also successful gaming individuals that are now helping entrepreneurs. And what you also see, which is really making attraction around the world, is the strategy Embracer Group have, and Stillfront, for example, and also to some degree the former Toddman Interactive, because they basically, you can call it abort mission or whatever, but they basically say to the stock market, hey, can we get some money? And then they buy a company. So the Embracer Group is probably one of the most active companies in the world now. So Sweden alone have more than 20 stock listing compared to UK's 3, for example, in the games industry. Sweden is also in the forefront with VR. I was lucky to be advising the boss of HTC Vive 2017. I've been skeptical about VR, but now with Oculus Quest, there is things happening, a lot of opportunities in B2B with VR. And in Sweden, you have Fast Travel Games, also Oskar Burman from Angry Birds and EA. You have Resolution Games, which Tommy Palmen company, and they have really found their niche how to work with VR. If you're looking regional, you have Tar Valley in Skellefteå, always done a good job. They're moving in now with AR as an early company, augmented reality. So I wouldn't say I'm amazed, because I've been around since forever in the games industry, but I would say I'm impressed how the Swedes marching on with initiatives. And obviously there was a great media news on Arctic Game Lab and what you're doing up there in the north, in the region with activity. So that's really great to see. If I continue my Norrländska fast English and just scanning through how I see various platforms, obviously mobile is going to be the biggest one. Myself, I'm not tremendously active in mobile because it's so much about algorithms and tool and ad revenue and so on. But I'm keeping an eye on it, and I'm helping companies, for example, how do you set the KPIs, key performance indicator, if you go to Southeast Asia or India? How is the audience different? And also, if you look into the new generation of kids that's approaching the smartphone, they are super informed and constantly connected. The kids today of 6-10 years old, they're amazing how quick they are, how connected they are, how fast they are. I'm an advisory board if we come in a company called Kids Insight. 66% of all 4 years old in UK have their own access to their own iPad. But with all the growth and the smartphones booming in, the discovery is obviously more challenging because both iTunes, Apple, and Google Play have changed their shopping window, how fast you can be on the top list. So you have to be clever how you do with the attention game. How do you find yourself space and stay in there? PC market, I thought many years ago that PC market will drop. It's actually continued to grow roughly with 5% every year, PC market. A household with a PC means that that's a household of gamers. But you also have to be careful because PC means North America, no, only 20% market share in North America. So obviously you know that Scandinavia, Germany, etc. is a great. I think also PC platform is a perfect entry for a startup. You have a lot of opportunities there with Steam, Epic Games Publishing, and new companies coming on. So that there's always a lot of venues you can go with the PC. You can actually also do a digital version and then outsource somebody to do a physical version in some of the regions around the world, because still many regions like physical. To give you an example, in Dubai, where I also was in charge 4 years with Microsoft, when you have 50 degrees, you can either go to a restaurant, you can go to a shopping mall, or you can be indoor and play games. And they actually want to go to a shopping mall to buy the games and then play indoor. So there is many regions that actually prefer physical versus digital for various reasons. I think you've also been following the success of Roblox. I had a little bit of an intelligence work with Roblox, not directly from them, but I mean they are an amazing company. You have some companies actually also in Sweden that are doing something similar. You have AdventureBox that went to the stock market. You have Hybrid World in Gothenburg, which I've been a little bit connected to. And if you look at Roblox as a platform, there you have so many opportunities if you're a game player yourself or if you're a developer, because you can actually develop games for Roblox, and some of the good ones, they're building highly developed games. And Roblox paid out $100 million to game creators last year. So there are new platforms coming. The MMO is going to be new social platforms. Instagram, Facebook going to decrease for the younger generation. You have opportunities with IP and branding. The licensing business is growing. Last year, the licensing business grows 6%. You have clothing coming in from esport. You have IPs going into board game business. I'm still a little bit in board game business. It's really interesting. I know many of you there attending this web seminar is also interesting in board games. If you then look into, so what do I think is interesting companies? Well, there are many, and we can talk about Q&A, but I used to take internet gaming database, igdb.com in Gothenburg. I was lucky to be their advisor. Actually, they were lucky. No, I was kidding. But that was a company with a fantastic passion and belief where they basically collect player data and data from all the what's happening out there. And they were acquired by Twitch last summer. And Twitch is quite easy with what they're going to do with them. You have, I think, Laserwolf, what they're looking into AR now with a different type of gameplay and crossplay. You have a Stockholm studio called NAG Studios, where they're approaching a different way of doing their own games. I think games for esport going to also be a little bit changed, where you're trying to control the value chain instead of always relying on the big, let's say, Riot type of companies. You have a company in Umeå called Rank One, which looking into build almost like LinkedIn for gamers, so you can be seen and heard and have your own platform to communicate. And so on. So there is I mean, that's just a very quick snapshot from Sweden, where I think some of the startups and there is a lot of startups which I'm looking forward for in the north of Sweden as well, of course. So you had many comments and presentation about pitch. So I don't think I need to go in so much about pitching, but I would like to say, when you're doing a pitch and presenting, you really have to think, how do you scale? Because the top tier investors, they can really quickly ask after 4 minutes, after 10 minutes, how do you scale? Show me how you can do 100 million US dollar. And then you can't be stunned, because the attention span of an investor, after 12 minutes, they have decided to 90%. After 8 minutes, they have an indication about 75% where they're going. So it's so much about knowing your story. They're looking very much into the founder and the founders' capacity to build a team. What do you bring into the table? Is it niche or mainstream? For example, I was asked to be coaching the startups in investing games in Stockholm, and it was amazing work. We had a committee with Susanna Mesa Graham, who also was in Arctic Game Talk, Martin Walfis from Egmont Games. And I was coaching the teams, and the winner, which I actually picked as a winner, confidentially, I said, I think they're going to win. It's a company in Hedemora, Kill Monday Games, because they really focus on a niche game, horror theme. They know exactly what they're doing. They build up their community. They're even looking to build up a cafeteria in Hedemora for the community. And I think that Bumi in Luleå, for example, they also have a niche. They're thinking, okay, we go for this audience, we go for environment, and then we're building in new ad models. So also, why should we go in with your company? What problem do you solve? And I think always don't focus so much on the problem, because the game industry doesn't have enormous amount of problems. I think it's more about what kind of experience are you enhancing by doing that? What is your business model? What is your monetization strategy? It's easy to know the first couple of answers, but you need to think around the corner as well. And what is your addressable market? I saw one company that was planning to do an IPO, and that was a horror pitch. And I said to them, you're so wrong. And I'm sorry to see this. And instead of being angry for me, they asked me to help them, because they took traditional KPIs and put that into another region. So you really need to know your addressable market. And of course, the roadmap. I know in the startup community, they call it Lampinen's staircase, but that's basically a very simple staircase that I've learned from London Business Schools, which I also know that investors are using, and I know that some in the audience today is also looking into that kind of staircase. And then be precise. What are you asking after? What money do you want to have? And do you really want these investors? Because there's been a trend lately now. I got a call actually yesterday from an esport company. They said, actually 2 calls from esport company this week. They're like, we spent 2.5 hours with this investor. They just ask questions all the time. And I'm saying, are you sure they are asking questions about you to invest, or are they fishing? Because there are many companies now say, okay, we're going to learn more about the gaming industry. We're going to be investing. So let's fake call a few companies, and then we drag all the info we can get for them, spend hours and hours and hours, and then we build something. So do a business intelligence before. Check who are you talking to? Why are they approaching you? What kind of track record they have? Or you can also approach me and I can do a quick check for you. But the research about doing things are incredibly important. I could talk about cloud gaming, but I can probably do that more if I get questions. I was quite bold 3 years ago. I started saying LinkedIn, Netflix for games is not going to happen. And I keep saying that Netflix for games is not going to happen because it's so different. It's going to take a long time. Google, Stadia. Well, do you know the broadband connection in the flyover states for US? It's going to take time. I had a long call with the top team of Ericsson 2 weeks ago, what they're doing with 5G and so on. So I'm happy to ask a question about cloud gaming. I think the last thing, I think I've been talking for 20 minutes or so now. Therese looks relaxed. I'm happy to see that. So when there is no events, there is no GDC in San Francisco, there is no South by Southwest in Austin, there is no E3 in Los Angeles, there is no Gamescom in Cologne. What do you do then? Well, you need to broadcast, you need to be seen, but you can't just send cold mails to people because, for example, a top tier investment company, they get 20 mails per day about investing. They scan 600 companies annually. And therefore, I think you should think, how do you approach an investor? Do you need help to somebody to facilitate that approach? How do you be seen? Don't put too much things on social media and just scam, and be clever on when you broadcast and how do you broadcast, and try to connect with people. For example, now with the Corona situation, the COVID, I've been first I was careful meeting people, but I actually have a lot of walking around. I had a walk 2 weeks ago with the former boss of Disney Nordic. So you can really have walking around because it's tiring to sit in Zoom conference for hours and hours and hours. I think you should do that 2 hours a day and then go for a walk. It's incredibly creative. And I have 2 walks today, as I said, one with Stefan Ekström from Ernst & Young, because Ernst & Young, they act almost like a roundabout for companies that are trying to seek actually get bought, because there's so many companies now that are looking for other companies to buy. So there is so many consolidations going on. And of course, looking back to Corona, which everybody talked about, the COVID situation, my view on that one is, I think the business, it's not going to be the same. Like it's going to be less travel. It's going to be different kind of events later on. But I would say that the entertainment business will continue to grow. But mid to long term, premium purchases of headsets and console will of course go down. And gradually some monetization will go down, because when you're a parent, or so many people have lost their jobs, and some countries are in really bad shape. So it's going to be a bit of short-term gain, but obviously also long-term pain. Having said that, lot of money are coming into the gaming sector, and that money is there for long-term. And therefore, I think if you're in the games sector today, you should be really pleased. And that's the reason I stayed in the game sector forever. I think that's, I can take a few minutes on this business model. I touch a bit on PC, I touch about mobile. You have Apple Arcade. I think Apple Arcade is a little bit wait and see. You have ad revenue driven business. I think ad revenue business will be more challenging due to COVID, because of course, marketing directors around the world with big brands, they have instructions to lower their spending or change their spending or take more transparency on their investments. So that's a bit what I would say. And I think if I'm finishing off the Therese, do I have 2 more minutes, do you think?
Yeah,
I got
absolutely.
the note perfect. So I think what you should think about, which I used to have my finishing slide in bigger events like I had in Monaco in February. How do you optimize your data, and who control your player data? How do you win the attention game? How do you reach out to an influencer? And really know your stuff, because the top tier investors or companies, they ask some tricky questions, and they will really look into how prepared you are. And again, think about the revenue models. Don't only think about the first 6 months, think about the next 3 years. Think outside your box, but that I mean also outside your region. Your team, what kind of experience is needed for the next 3 years? And think hard when you involve an investor, even if you're desperate for money. an investor, I used to say, it's almost like a tattoo in your forehead, because you can say bye-bye to a friend, to a relative, to a neighbor. You can say, I don't want to see them anymore. But you can't do that to an investor, because you can't just cut the cord. So therefore, you have to be really careful, and also be a little bit pushy. Ask questions to the investor. Is it an observation seat? Is there an active board seat? Is it an influence? Want to have a lot of info? Read pressure. Or you can take in an experienced advisor like me, where I actually can shield some of the aggressive investors. That was a little bit what Minecraft used me for example, 2011. So I think that's about my word of advice from where I'm sitting now in Elite Marina Towers in Stockholm. And
Q&A. Ja. Har vi mickar? Härligt. Super, jättebra Stefan. Mycket intressant. Jag tänkte på English, sorry. Is it Monday morning or is it Wednesday? I don't know. I was thinking about being a startup, because many of our companies are in that situation. What should you focus on? I think it's important to find an edge, a market that's not oversaturated, or a platform that's not oversaturated. Do you have any feel for where you should go, where you should aim?
I think the niche approach, is interesting. If you look at the northern region, is it a niche linked to board games? Or is it like the environment thing, as I mentioned with Boomi? Or is it a retro? Because I've been involved in a project called Kvarken, is there something where you can really have passionate people? For example, for fun, I started my career in board games, and then I sort of left board games for many, many years. And now I joined a group on Facebook called Avalon Hill Board Games. And the passion they show is just amazing. So I think that is where I find it probably easier to start thinking from a niche point of view. Can it be connected to some of the other major assets you have, for example, up in the north? That's probably because if you're trying to build the next Candy Crush, you're going to need a lot of money. You can try, of course, and you can also try on a different platform, because gradually, I saw Magnus have a question on blockchain, which I'm happy to answer later, because there is opportunities in esport, in blockchain, in VR and AR, when you have a massive congestion in the traditional console space, for example.
I think the analog games part is interesting to touch. I think we are a bit unusual in that way in Arctic Game Lab, that we actually try to focus on analog games as well, and see it as a possible way of finding success. Do you think like the board game market and the analog games market will grow? Is it a good strategy to keep on pushing that?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. I was trained by Nokia to never say that's a good question, but since I know you, Johan, that's a good question. The board game market has grown tremendously, and I know that, for example, Paradox is looking more into enhanced IP, and in Germany, for example, board games are huge. And when board games tried to go digital, they were less successful. Games Workshop was wobbling around with their licensing for 3 years, but now they get it right. If you look at Fat Shark, that gradually started their business by also porting and helping Minecraft. They've done a fantastic job, Fat Shark in Stockholm, Martin and his gang, and they do licensing for Games Workshop. So I think the board game sector and the IP connection there has a lot to offer. And to give you an example, I don't know all the details with Lazy Wolf, but I like the initial thought process from the team in Skellefteå on how they're looking into AR and crossplay.
Super. I also think that's interesting to dig deeper in, and that's like the future of XR. As you mentioned, VR has been people has not believed that much in it, if we say so, because it's so hard to buy or expensive to buy the devices, and the market is so small. And they said that like AR would be the next big thing.
And Johan, on that topic, I think you led me to a good thing you said. My daughters, they've been lucky to see a lot of games and movies around the year. And I was early into VR with HTC, and I saw some amazing stuff with Game of Thrones, for example. But the problem with VR is that today, look at Apple 4K, look at the new television set that you see in Skellefteå, Umeå, and Luleå, where you can buy a fabulous TV for 10,000 Swedish kronor. So they've seen all the cool stuff. A 15-year-old boy or girl have traveled around a lot today. So therefore, the cool factor with VR is like, ooh, mind-blowing, ooh, 1 time, 2 times, but the retention, no. And therefore, I think if you do VR, it has to be something different. For example, first, when I was early visiting fast travel games, the easiness to play a game, I was playing a war game, I could reload very quick. So it's more the game mechanics, or again, the niche, which is more important. And I think with AR, I mean, you have Bubblar coming up with games. What's going to happen with AR? Because you have to be careful how long would you want to hold your hand. Because when I was young and you had Sonic the Hedgehog, you know that you had 2 minutes to attract the gamers. Then you had 1 minute to attract the gamers. Now you have 15 seconds. If you're lucky, 25 seconds to attract a gamer. So therefore, the entry of a game, and with AR, how long and how often do you want to hold your phone? Do you want to lay it down? Do you will follow the other gameplay, and so on?
Super. We had some questions here as well.
Exactly. We have Magnus Söderberg. You already mentioned him. He was wondering about blockchain. So can you please tell us a bit more about that, blockchains and games?
Yeah, I think I was a bit passive on that one. I think partly because of my lack of knowledge, and secondly because I had so much to do. It's starting to happening, and I saw London Venture Partner had an article about it. So my idea now, when I'm going to London for walks with people, I'm going to understand more about it. It's coming. I think people are confused with blockchain, crypto, and Bitcoin, because in some of the segment you obviously have challenges with fraud and accidents with that. But I think the genuine objective with blockchain and what Magnus is trying to do is really, really interesting. And I actually saw a pitch deck from his team with Alex Benitez in Uppsala. So so my idea, actually, to answer short, is I want to learn more about it, and then I can be better informed. But I think it's going to happen, and I think me and Magnus going to connect next week.
Great. We also have a question from Johan Scott. He's wondering about who is the most active investors right now, and do you have any examples of exits that's been done lately worth mentioning?
Johan did a great pitch, because they went to top tier and managed to get a good attraction there. I think in Finland you have Play Ventures, in London you have Paul Hayden's company, and you have London Venture Partner. But starting also to bubbling in Sweden. I had a call last Friday. I'm not sure that's actually official. I can mention another company, Luminar Venture, is also very active now. So they're going to be more funds. They're going to actually happen. More investor pools is going to come very soon, because they're actually full. London Venture Partner are super active. I wouldn't be surprised if Luminar Venture is also coming with more. So I can have a call with you one later, but I would say London Venture Partner, Paul Hayden in UK, Play Venture in Finland, and I would say if you're seeking like 4 to 6 million, you can say Luminar Swedish kroner, like the value of death, 4 to 10 million. You can also go for Jakob K and his team. Jakob K and I went to the same grundskola in Luleå, Furuparksskolan. We were supposed to have 20 minutes call, me and Jakob, the founder of Luminar Venture. We talked for over an hour.
Nice. I have one last question from me. We'll see if it comes in anymore in the Q&A tool. But that's about bad news. We focus quite a lot on like the good and the positive things that's happening. Do you see any bad news in the industry that you should take in regard?
I think I had disliked loot boxes from day one. I think that's really sad to see because, as you know, I was the founder of the Swedish Trade Organization and long time ago. And what I didn't like, there also been some overwork and stress in some of the studios, actually, especially two in Stockholm, which I think is been handling now. But the loot boxes thing, as I used to say, if you're a parent with, let's say you're a divorced parent or something happened with an illness and you have 3 kids and you're very happy because you managed to buy a premium game for £40 and after 9 hours or 2 days the kid are saying, hey, what's the great thing there, I want to buy some extra. So I think it's good that regulation and loot boxes are coming. I also think if you look at FIFA, for example, it used to be a proper gameplay and now you're buying so many things for FIFA. Should FIFA go in 2 directions in the future? So I think gaming in general is different from gambling, but I think we have to be careful so we don't get too greedy. I hope that the premium model will stay longer, which actually the preferred option for PC. And today's consumer are clever that you can have some kind of product placement. But to answer your question, I don't like the loot boxes. I don't like when people are fishing for information. And you have to be careful what you give out. I'm working very much with business intelligence. What type of info do you send out? How do you share it? And are they fishing or are they serious? But in general, I think we are in a good place. And there is a lot of transparency. People are helping each other. Successful people are humble. So I think it's mostly good.
I think in regard of that, I mean, the mobile market is by far the largest, and free-to-play games is, of course, the biggest part of that. And I suspect that like lots and lots of the kids that are playing, these 6-year-olds that you mentioned and so on, are playing a lot of free-to-play games. Do you think we were teaching them or getting them used to that it's like that way? Will we have a problem with gambling and gaming coming closer in the future generations to come due to that?
That's actually one of the best questions I had for a month, Johan. And I'm not saying that to be polite to you, because I think that could be the case. The reason is that when I took a deeper dive into 2 things, one was Roblox, and also when I'm Kids Insight is a massive research company now, growing like crazy. They decided to take 4 people around the world in their advisory board. I happen to be one of them. And what's happening with that kind of trend is that the toy industry are suffering even more. So instead of getting a toy or lördagsgodis or the former hemmakväll when we went to rent a DVD, they asking for money to buy skins in Fortnite. And they are, hey, can I get more? Can I buy this? Can I buy? So that consumption, digital consumption, where you maybe should buy a frisbee or go outdoor, or you should do something rewarding. So I think companies that also think a little bit about the charity, because that is what I like, for example, with Kickstarters and charity. You have platforms coming up where you basically say, do you want to donate to this fabulous girl who is an influencer? So I think we have to be careful with this free-to-play and always triggering the monetization thing. I'm actually in contact with a guy from the UK government and parliament. He left now. We actually started to be good friends. He has a wife from Finland. They call TASO Advisory. He's keeping an eye on that public affair. And I think if they go too far in the industry, I'm going to knock on the door on the public affairs on that specific. So I think we need to be clever how we raise the new generation of kids.
Yeah. Good. We have one last question in.
Exactly, from Henrik Lindfors. He's wondering about your thoughts on emerging platforms like smart speakers.
I think it's really interesting. Amazon have 6,000 people working on that technology. Cambridge in UK, which is roughly 1.5 hours from London, they have so many things happening on the AI. And you have Wonderword, you have Boden Business Park, who's doing a lot with voice recognition. I think that's really interesting, coming back both to the board game where you have rules disappearing, you have 3D printers, so the environment with voice speaker, you can talk with Jurgen Klopp directly in your living room, and it will enhance the gameplay. But you also you have a safety thing with voice recognition, as you have also have with modern TV and webcams and so on. But in general, I believe it's not gonna come next year, but for sure it's gonna be a key factor, voice recognition.
Good. All right. Thank you so much, Stefan. It was a pleasure to have you.
Likewise, great to see you guys. It felt like I'm almost in Skellefteå.
Yeah.
I'm gonna drive. I'm gonna pass Skellefteå this summer in July or August to say hi to my mother and a few other people up there. So I'm looking forward to that, to the lovely summer light.
Yeah.
You're always welcome.
Super. So next week's guest.
Exactly. Next week's guest is the last Arctic Game Talk before the holidays, actually. We will be back in September again. Next week we have Jared Henrad from Cyborn. We'll talk about 3D characters. So we have a short film from him.
Hey everyone, my name is Jared and I'm a character artist for games. During the next Arctic Game Talk, we will have a quick dive into scanned meshes for characters, more specifically head scans. We will have a look at where and how to gather scan data, what programs are most commonly used during the process, and by doing so, a possible workflow on how to deal with all these meshes. All this next Wednesday. Looking forward to see you all there.
Right, we will publish the link in the Discord channel in the chat, so you can see it again with sound. And that's all for this week. So see you next week.
See you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Bye.